Good morning, everybody. Here we are on this Wednesday, the 19th of October. All right, well, I see that we've got some kind of a problem connecting to TikTok this morning, but that's brand new, so I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, we've got lots of things going on here. Every day there's something new. Lots of people watching us, listening to us on different channels. So some days you win them all, some days you just win one or two. Here is Simpiwe Mtetwa, who's in the studio in Joburg, and you wonder sometimes why the show starts perfectly on time. It's usually when it's just me and Simpiwe. We don't have to rely on anyone else, right?
That is true. That is very, very true.
All right.
We like the people that keep everything together and then everyone else makes us look bad.
Absolutely. Well, exactly. Thank you. Now we can say that because none of them are here to counteract the argument.
And we started the show in time, so we have proof.
Well, precisely. I mean, if there's a late day, it's usually not our fault, hey, Simpiwe?
Yes.
It's usually someone else. Yeah, precisely. All right. First thing, I was meant to be joined this morning. We were meant to have Alex Cage as our co-host this morning, and he was going to join us. He just recently, like 2 weeks ago, left 947, and he was very excited to be on this morning. Then he suddenly called me last night at like 10 o'clock or whatever. He's like, not sure if I can actually do this in terms of the contract, because I've got like what they do with when you leave a media business or there are a lot of businesses that do this. They put basically a restraint of trade on you. And he was just nervous that he doesn't want to get in trouble and then not get paid if he joins us for like an hour and a half of fun and stupidity. So I said to him, don't worry about it. We'll get him on at some later stage. So if you're wondering where he is, he sends his apologies, and he was very, sad and sorry that he couldn't join us this morning. But he told me last night, listen, better not to take the chance. Mm-hmm. And he will be on the show at some point very, very soon. So if you were wondering, that is where he is, and he's not going to be joining us today, but he'll be on soon enough. All right. So Cliff Central, a bad workman blames his tools. Go straight to hell. Corona's boring. Go straight to hell. Blaming no tools. You know, we've survived load shedding, desks exploding. I mean,
yes.
were you in the studio that day when the desk just went? Pfft?
No, but I've walked in the morning where the desk was completely off, and I was like, what the hell? What's going on? Called Greg immediately, and we still made a plan, and we still had a show.
Well, speaking of Greg, he is basically finishing off his last 2 weeks with us.
Yes.
Because Greg is moving. He is moving himself and his whole family to Israel, and they are setting themselves up anew and afresh in a brand new country, which I have to tell you, I think is so brave. You know, we had someone on Monday, Antoinette, who has moved back to South Africa. She and her family moved somewhere in Europe, and then I forget where, decided to come back. And I've become completely non-judgmental and totally in awe of people who can uproot themselves and start anew. That's got to be a really difficult thing to do. I love being a part of this country. I love being in, a country where I can understand the people, where I have deep roots. It would be very hard for me to start again. And I've thought about it. I'm sure a lot of people have. But I know where I belong, and this is what I do. But really, for someone else to have the guts to do that, and I said to Greg yesterday, I think it's so brave. He's got 2 little kids, and I really think it's an incredibly, it's an unselfish move too for parents who are doing this, because he wants to give his kids a chance in a country that really is an extraordinary place. I mean, Israel has done, in 70 years that they've been on Earth and that they've existed as a separate state, they've done amazing things there. And if you've ever read a book called Startup Nation, you'll know what I mean. So Greg is heading over there, and he's going to take his 2 little kids, and they will probably have, I mean, certainly the eldest will have some memory of South Africa, I'm sure, and they'll still come back here and visit occasionally. But it's going to be so different for them. They're going to grow up in a completely different country with different ways of doing things, a whole host of opportunities that they might not have had here, or the different opportunities that would be, so completely foreign to us. And I think it's really cool. So good for Greg. He's going to be going soon, but we will obviously still be able to check in with him from time to time on the staff and everything. So we're excited about that for him. Lots of things are happening this year. It's been a year of incredible change. And
Yes, it has.
besides the tools that switch off and on, Corona's boring. Time that we have no control over. There definitely are a whole lot of people that make this thing work behind the scenes. Basitsana
Yes.
says, I'm leaving this morning for Cape Town for the next 3 weeks from Joburg to explore semigration options. Ooh,
That's
Basitsana.
nice.
Yeah, that's very
Okay.
nice. I've heard a lot
Enjoy
of
Cape
people
Town,
wanting to
girl.
do that. Yeah, and we spoke to the Cape Town mayor the other day, and I asked him about this. I said, what do you make of all these people from all over the country? You got wealthier people who are semigrating to Cape Town because they want to live in a province that works better than all the ANC-run provinces. And then you got people who are extremely poor who are moving there because they've got absolutely no opportunity in other places. And Mayor of Cape Town had some interesting stuff to say. If you want to listen to that interview, you can find it on cliffcentral.com. All right. Snai says, I'm very excited. I'm moving to Malta. Sweet Jesus.
Ooh.
Jesus.
Okay,
Nice.
so people are just moving. Is that what we're doing? Is that consensus?
Clearly.
We are just exploring the
Simply,
world? Okay.
it's like eventually it's going to be you and me in Joburg.
Gareth, I just might leave you. You've lived your life. I think
You're gonna go.
I think
So
it's
it's going to
time
be
for me
me.
to also Yes,
I'm
it's time for me to
okay.
explore the world.
All right. Bye. Just me. I'll wake up in the mornings and do this show for like the 3 people who live in Joburg. All right, let's get cracking. We got a lot to do this morning and plenty to talk about. Just interestingly, Snai is going to that Frank Salt seminar that we talked about on Monday to hear more about Malta. Excellent. Excellent. You know what? You got to
Tell us
explore
how it
all of the
goes.
options. Damn right. Gary says, I think I'm going to use my air fryer today. You see, this show changes lives. I'm telling you. We would not be having conversations about air fryers were it not for this show. That is the truth.
Yes.
All right. Quick thing. This came up in my feed yesterday, and I thought it was worth referring to because we were talking about, all the waste, all the electronic waste that people are trying to get rid of, and how much waste we generate in the world because of all the technology that we no longer use. Old cell phones and things. This is a first generation iPhone from 2007 that apparently sold at an auction for $40,000. An old
What?
iPhone 1. Yes. And we were just talking about this. Remember Mash and Leanne and I were saying, what are you going to do with all this old stuff? And we were talking about how, you've got to get rid of it. Do you recycle it? Does it get passed down the chain so that, eventually your cousin's mom's sister's brother's youngest nephew gets your old iPhone or whatever? And I think Mash laughed and said, iPhone, please. That's too expensive for, even the most distant relative. But here we go. First generation iPhone. The original iPhone that you will remember was like a spin-off of the iPod, because the iPod came out first, didn't it? And that was to
Yes, it
play
did.
music. And then this iPhone was like an iPod that also could make calls. And there were a few apps. There were a few apps that worked on it. Sold for $40,000. Obviously, to some collector. Isn't that cool?
Sure. That's
Yeah. So I
what,
was
like
thinking,
about 700,000 rand?
let me do a quick calculation on today's money because we're looking at an exchange rate of near 18 rand to the dollar. So if we multiply 18 by 40,000, yep, we get 720,000. Not too bad for an old piece of technology, right?
Had we known. Oh my
Mm-hmm.
word. To just keep it
Mm-hmm.
safe and whatnot, we could have been banking 40,000 US dollars. Well,
But
my first phone
I'll
was not
guarantee
even an
that when
iPhone, so
no, mine was such a piece of shit. I wish I had it to show you. I don't even know how to look up a picture of that thing. Don't even think it had a name. But it would probably have to be in the box in perfect condition, as you must know from collectomania over the last couple of years. the more original and preserved and untouched something like that is, the higher the prices it can obviously, determine. All right, so
Sure.
I thought that was interesting, considering we were talking about it just the other day. Corona's Boring says, I bet Cyril's iPad could be sold for the same price. Is that thing still missing? Do you remember when he
I
went,
don't know
I
if they
don't know,
found it.
where is my iPad? I can't find my iPad. Do you remember?
Yes. And we're just like, how? A whole president loses his iPad. How, Sway? How is that possible? That bad cupcake. No.
All right. People are definitely talking about moving this morning, and saying, I love this. This is a conversation, by the way, that like a couple of years ago, people would go, "Oh my God, that's such a horrible thing to say." Snae says to Basitsana, "I'm super excited. I hope I'll enjoy moving there. You'll love Cape Town, by the way. It's beautiful here. Just stay away from the townships." I mean, you're,
Hey,
you know,
each to
not
their own.
wrong.
So, last week we saw an article, Gareth, about like they want to implement this thing when tourists come to South Africa that they'll have to watch a safety video just
Oh,
as
yeah.
they landed. And I'm just like, no, we shouldn't do this. And now, since everyone's moving everywhere, I kind of see why we'd give people a heads up to be like, yeah, if you're gonna be in South A, yeah, just don't go to the dodgy places,
Yeah.
or just don't have your phone just lying
Well,
around. Just don't
someone
do
told me
XYZ.
someone told me that they are doing these Rosettenville walking tours in Joburg. Now, that people walk through like interesting old neighborhoods of Johannesburg and places like
Oh yes.
Rosettenville, which are very old. They have a history, there's a story there. But I heard from someone else, don't go to Rosettenville because apparently that is the main place where they do organ harvesting. So they will they will take, they will take your kidneys. Listen, I don't know whether either of those are true, but it's not on my agenda to go to Rosettenville anytime soon on a walking tour. But apparently these things are
Sure.
quite popular. People do them on a Sunday.
I've actually done one of those. And
You
it was
have, you
really
see?
yes. It was quite I think you would enjoy it, Gareth, because they give you like the history behind like Joburg CBD, and there were like a couple of tunnels that we learned about. We learned about like
Hmm.
the historical buildings, and it was really informative. And it was like, oh, this place used to do XYZ and that. I was like,
Yeah.
wow, I never thought Joburg was this cool. I just always saw it in the light of taxis, dirt, and it's not safe. And then
Yeah.
learning the history behind, Johannesburg was really interesting. So if you want to do one of those walks, because we also did
I'm
it in a group, and I think that made it a bit
pleased.
safer.
No, sure. I'm pleased you've actually done one because you can speak with experience here. I mean, listen, Joburg is way more interesting and has levels that people who just write it off as not being a very pretty place, they forget about that. Joburg is loaded with history, such interesting things. Ben was telling me one day that he went to one of those landlords' mansions on the ridge, and he said that was the most amazing, incredible day, filled with stories about the people who lived in this house, and the things they got up to, and the portraits of them on the walls. And I
Mm,
mean, if you're looking for interesting stories, I often think we miss out on this country as South Africans because we don't look at it like tourists look at it. And
yes.
sometimes if you've got friends from overseas and they come here and they'll say to you, "Oh, we've got to go here," and they show you something in a guidebook and you're like, "What the hell's that?"
I'm
You know?
not going there. There.
Yeah, they're like, "Oh, let's go to Hillbrow." And you're like,
What? Excuse me? Am I trying to
uh,
die? Am I trying
yeah,
to get
exactly.
robbed? I still love my life.
So where did your tour go?
So we did the Landlords building. We did there's a culinary school as well that we went to. There was also an underground a secret tunnel that they showed us about I forgot the name of it. And those like places
Secret.
are all like they're all like in one road basically. So it was like, oh, you jump from here to here to here. And it was so informative. Like even the Ranglord building, they were like movies are shot in here, and this is
Mm.
how it kind of started, from like the 1980s and what I was like, wow, I did not know. Like I used to pass this building all day, every day with taxis, and now I look at it and I'm like, shucks. okay. And when I watch movies, I'm like, oh, this was shot there. I can see the furniture. So it's really, really informative. I think the best part of it is that it's done in a group setting and we're all just walking to the different buildings and they're
Right.
telling us, oh, this is how it started. So that's what makes it safe, I would say.
Sure.
But any other day, I would not do it on my own.
Mm-mm.
But it's really, really informative, and they kind of like also trying to get people to clean up Joburg and make it like a very nice place to be at and hang in. I don't know if I'll ever just hang about in Joburg CBD, but I enjoyed learning about the buildings and the history of the buildings. Because now I'm like, every time I pass, I'm like, oh, you okay? I remember you were built like a few hundred years ago, and this is what came about
Yeah.
it. So yes.
I love this. Onchopotse says, no, these neighborhoods we're talking about, that's where they traffic people and prostitution, he says. Ay, ay, ay. Okay, well, Don says, I used to do CPF armed response in Rosettenville. Stay far away from there. Oh, my God. All
Noted.
right.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Got you. Well, we got you. Ntogoza says the Joburg CBD is dodgy as fuck. I drove into the Joburg CBD this morning and there's litter everywhere, says Ancient Ether. Well, David Gao is so funny. I saw him last night. I went to dinner, which was really good to go to because I like seeing that people are doing these things again. It has to be said, the streets were so quiet. The dinner finished at like 10:15. So it was late, but not like super late. The streets, I drove through the middle of Sandton. It was dead quiet. It was like a ghost town. So it shows you things haven't completely got back to where they were pre-COVID. But that's not why I bring it up. David Cowell was very, very funny. He said, yes, sis, Joburg is going to be one of the only cities in the world where the mayor arrived by Blue Light Brigade and then she left by Uber. He's so funny. By the way, we may have Popalatse on tomorrow on the Burning Platform as our guest. So we'll ask her about that, among other things. But he was hilarious. He was talking about all the stupid things at the Corona Command Council that they did. And he had this whole thing. I'm not going to do like a David Gow because he's a genius. I've always said so. He's been a guest on this show a number of times. But when I saw him last night, I was like, I'm in for a good night. And he was saying they used to roll the dice, these coronavirus command council. They'd throw the dice and then go, let's make up restaurants. You can sit down without a mask, but you can't stand. You remember that shit? And then the gardening equipment. You remember when they wouldn't let us buy gardening equipment? I mean, he was so funny just bringing up how dumb we were during all of this.
And you know
Dumb
what's
they
worse is people they just took it and they're like, yes, yet
sure.
and like
Makes
there's
sense.
certain things I was like, okay, cool, this makes sense. And then like I'm still hurt about the snacks, guys. Like I know that other people were like team fitness and whatnot, but I was like, why couldn't we get Woolies chicken? Why? What did Woolies ever do to you? And we've
So,
never gotten an answer. Like, hmm.
yeah. All right.
How do we
Well,
move?
let's see what we've got here. Ruth says, and this is a good one. The Rand Club is one of our company's venues for board meetings. Well, the Rand Club is beautiful and is still one of the only things about the CBD that makes it civilized, honestly. Corona's Boring says, last time he was in Braamfontein, a guy said, I don't want to shoot you. So friendly.
Yeah, they actually say that. Oh, they'll be like, I don't want to hurt you. Just give me the phone. And you're like, you know what? There we go. I'll just surrender now because we don't want things happening to us. So yeah, hey, criminals nowadays, they move different.
Oh,
They be
so
stealing
I had
meat even.
stealing meat. Exactly. I saw that story. So I was bitching and moaning on Monday about those people who threw the soup at the Van Gogh painting. And I saw that some some guy in a skirt and a crop top with his stomach showing, a guy, he must be in his 20s or 30s, not a particularly attractive looking human being, but that's besides the point. He spray painted the Aston Martin dealership, with orange paint, protesting climate change. So I just want to play this for you. This is hilarious. It's some girl on TikTok who like had a go at these activists, and she feels just like I do, but she's much funnier.
Bro, this is exactly why everyone fucking hates activists. Stop throwing shit at paintings. But it's for the awareness. Awareness of what, dog? Global warming. We're very aware. Every day we go outside, it's hot. Stupid. Leave the galleries alone, man. Damn.
I love her. She's great. She's terrific.
Yes.
So I find
But
her
she's
on my-
right. Leave the galleries alone. Like, leave them
What do you want?
alone.
You know, here's another thing just to add to my rant from Monday. Like, if you can paint something as beautiful as that, which of course none of these people who call themselves activists can do, if you can, sure, then you're allowed to protest that stuff. But I don't think any of them can do even a square inch as well as any of these great masterpieces were done by the artists who painted them. And if you can't, don't destroy something that you can't yourself replicate, you know? Otherwise, you really are just taking something away from the rest of us. That's all you're doing. So it is
Don't destroy, period. I think people should not be
God's
destroyed.
good.
It's like people that burn down libraries or schools when they're protesting, or like, I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. Why are you doing this? Because now we're going backwards instead of forward. In as much as you want to bring awareness, what did a painting ever do to you? Nothing.
Yeah.
Go deal with the people that are there. Like, why don't they go to the airports? That's
And by
where
the way,
the real issues at.
you
With
know
the
what's
private
good?
jets.
There's exactly the private jets. They never go for those people. The other thing that I saw they're doing in America now is that some of these activists are like they're environmentalists. So they take milk from cows off the shelf and then they empty the milk on the floor. Have you seen this? And
Yes,
that's
and I'm just like, why? You're
no,
wasting food. You're wasting.
not only that, but who are they punishing? You think they're punishing the dairy farmer who's already been paid for that milk? You think they're punishing the store owner? No, they're punishing the poor worker who earns a minimum wage who has to clean that up because some spoilt university student who's got a chip on their shoulder feels that they have to do something or say something and film themselves doing something so they can feel that they make a difference in the world. The only person who's being punished is the poor woman who has to clean that or man who has to clean it up with a mop afterwards. And have you ever cleaned up milk? Do you know what it's like? You know what happens when it goes sour? Do you know what happens to the smell of that floor? You are a selfish sack of shit if you do that. It's just awful. And they're not
Like,
punishing anybody who they think they're punishing. It's just such a cheap way of, if you're not sacrificing something yourself, then you're not an activist. So you have to be the one who primarily loses something. And these guys are not going to jail. I mean, they're not being arrested and then put into jail like, Nelson Mandela did for 27 years for any of this. It's too easy to do this. There are no consequences for them. And the consequences are all for other people, and usually for people who are much lower than they are on the socioeconomic scale. So you're actually punishing people who already have much more difficult lives than you do.
mhm.
It sounds like such a selfish, crazy thing to do. I don't understand how anyone can get a thrill out of this at all. It's awful. I did see in the news, and we'll get to these headlines just now, but I did see that Kanye West, who's also always in the news, I saw that he is looking at buying um, the platform, the social media platform Parler, which I'm
Mhm.
not on. I've heard about it. I've heard that it's kind of the new free speech platform. They're trying to take business away from Twitter. Don't know how successful they are, but Kanye West, obviously, this guy's, for all the things that we could say about him, we've said he's crazy. He needs to be put under curatorship. People have said he's lost his mind. People have said he's totally unhinged. I don't know whether he is or isn't. It seems to me that as soon as you go against some kind of popular narrative that everybody has agreed in the media that we must all have the same opinion on, then they go after you. They're calling him anti-Semitic now. All the stuff that we knew as soon as he said that he didn't
Mhm.
support a certain, side of the political aisle in America, we knew they would start going for him. And that's exactly what's happened. So he says he might be buying Parler. And it wouldn't be so irregular for him to do this. He's always been contrarian. He doesn't really care what people think of him, and he does his own thing. And you've got to admit, Kanye West is more creative than most people on planet Earth, and he has produced some incredible music and some incredible products. So I don't think we must write him off completely. He's crazy, but a lot
Yes.
of genius people are crazy, and I do think Kanye is a really smart dude. So I'm going to keep an eye on that.
I look forward to just seeing what he has to say about Kim Kardashian, like seeing all that drama, all those tweets. It's just like, what's going on, Kanye? Do you guys not have each other's numbers? Can you not just be civilized people? And it's like, nope. I'm gonna tweet about the fact that I couldn't see my kids today. I'm gonna tweet about the
Yeah.
fact that I don't know where they
Yeah.
are. And we're like, whoop. Okay, Kanye. All right. So yeah, that divorce did a number on him as well. So we'll see. We'll see what happens with the like Parler app or social media platform, and if it takes off. Because there's one thing buying it, but people gonna join you and leave Twitter for?
Well, that's it, right? Congo Chris says the left no longer represents the working class, and the thing Gareth just said about those woke tards dumping milk proves it. They care more about the dumping milk than the person who has to clean it up. Yeah, but it's all like low-level attention seeking. It actually isn't about the cause at all. You see these people who are like, I'm a climate activist. But when you ask them about it, they don't know anything about the climate. They don't know anything about alternative energy production. They don't even know about fossil fuel energy production. They certainly don't know about batteries to store that power. They have no idea about any of the detail of what they're supposed to be activists for. They just really want someone to notice them. They're like, please notice me. I'm also important. Me, me, me. I'm also here. Hi, hello. Please don't ignore me. Everybody else does because I'm fucking ugly and boring. Anyway. Gareth, you trying to understand idiots' points of view, pointless because they're idiots. They don't know the real reason why. That's exactly what I just said, Michael, but thank you. When my mum found out about almond milk, she said, oh no, shame, the poor cows, like it was offensive to cows. How I laughed. Well, I mean, almond milk is an interesting discussion, right? Because in order to get a liter of almond milk, it apparently takes many, many trees producing many, many almonds, and all of them need a lot more water than the average cow does. So they grow a lot of almond milk, well, they grow a lot of almonds in places like California. And apparently, because California is not a state in America that has a tremendous amount of excess water, they've been told that these farms soak up and use way more water than the average dairy farm does.
Climate change, people, where you at now?
Again, like, isn't that crazy? I heard an interesting fact on. There's this guy called Bjorn Lomborg who writes for the New York Times. Sometimes he's written many books as well, along with a guy called Rutger Bregman, who we've spoken to on the show. And Bjorn Lomborg says that the Great Barrier Reef. This is for those people who really care about climate change and global warming, right? I'm doing this for your benefit. Apparently, the Great Barrier Reef, 2/3 of it is in better condition than it has been since we started measuring the coral in the Great Barrier Reef. Now, that's obviously one of those areas where we were told for almost the whole of the 90s and the early 2000s that the Great Barrier Reef was dying and it was never going to come back, and it was all our fault. Human beings have killed the earth, blah, blah, blah. The end is nigh. All those fish are going to die. All those corals are going to go. All the micro, the plankton and the bacteria and all the things that live there are all gone forever. We're fucked. Basically, we're fucked. So forget about it. Like, there's no Great Barrier Reef for the people of the future. Now it is healing, and not only is it healing, but it is growing, and it is in a better condition than it has been. But does anyone tell that story?
No.
Do we ever hear Al Gore, who mentioned it in An Inconvenient Truth, the most boring documentary you've ever seen? Do we ever have Al Gore? Hi, I'm Al Gore, the robot from the future. Does he ever get back on TV and go, hey, by the way, I'm glad to bring you some really positive information. The Great Barrier Reef is doing well. No, he doesn't. He shuts up and he waits for the next emergency to talk about something negative. That's all they want to do. They don't want to tell you the truth. That's why I just don't believe these people anymore. So, some interesting facts for you this morning. We don't need a new free speech platform, says Robert. In fact, we don't need any. Too many dumb people are free speeching. There's a good argument there. Can't really say I have a problem with that. The signs of their ages ago, just asked Taylor Swift. Is that about what, Kanye?
Kanye.
Yeah, remember, didn't President Obama call him a jackass when he did that? Yo, I'm gonna let you finish. Huh?
Yeah.
Yo, Taylor, I'm gonna let you finish.
Just, it's still an iconic moment. It's still like one of those where like that is a moment where like, Kanye, yeah, you have balls. Chief, you have balls. You think Beyonce should have won that?
Mhm.
And look at where
All
he's
right.
at now with the Carters.
Yeah. Listen, anyone who marries into that family, you're bound to have mental health issues after a while. And by the way, speaking of mental health issues, we are going to have our own Professor Christopher Paul Szabo on later on. He is the host of Beyond Madness, one of our most successful and enduring podcast series. I love it because we're on season 3 already, and it is very popular. Not only is it very popular, been written about numerous publications. It's getting a lot of attention, and we discuss on that show everything to do with mental health, everything to do with modern psychiatry. And Prof. Szabo is really one of the most interesting people you could wish to talk to about these things. I love talking to him. Whenever he walks into my office, I know I'm not going to get anything else done for like an hour. And we just sit and talk. So I thought, well, let's get him on the show, because then you can share that with me. And I think you'll find it as fascinating as I do. Nico says it's the same as plant-based biltong. How the hell can you call it biltong or milk when it's not the actual thing? It's false advertising.
Yeah, the vegans need to tell us what's their obsession with like making everything look like meat. Like, I'm not mad that you've left meat alone, but I am mad at the fact there was a TikTok that I watched recently where the guy's like, I made a steak mushroom. No, sir, it's a mushroom that you just fried. Why do you have to put the steak mushroom? I don't understand. Or they'll have like, this looks like biltong, but it's not. Why?
Yeah, it's almost like they're missing something, Simpue, don't you think? It's almost like there's something in their life that they want desperately to admit that they need, but they can't do it. I wonder.
Well, guys, and judging from those recipes, I don't think that food tastes really great. So
Listen,
if you are wanting some meat, just come to the real stuff, the real Mokoya. We got you. Stop doing fake what. You'll be unhappy. And this is why you guys are so mean to everyone you meet, and your whole personality is centered around you being vegan. Oh, I'm vegan. No, my babes. Like, just, come back this side. It's okay.
we mustn't get too cut up about false advertising, because I've always thought that pies, like you don't know what's in that thing, and people say, chicken pie, and you just take it for granted.
Yes.
Well, we used to have this pie shop on campus when I was at university, and I always thought it was strange that there were no pigeons or doves around the pie shop. Just saying. False advertising? Maybe it wasn't chicken. The other white meat. Oh yeah.
Don't do that. No.
There were no pigeons for a whole 500, 600 meters around the pie shop. I'm just saying. So, and by the way, here's some more things. Gore told us that the ice would have melted by 2004. Yeah, the polar bear population, and they always use polar bears as the other example of like global warming and how, oh, shame, the poor polar bears are going to be floating around on a tiny and reducing block of ice somewhere in the North Atlantic for the rest of their lives. And then they'll die out. Everything, we're just killing everything. Sure, we are killing some things, but polar bear populations are going up. So stop lying to people.
But I also
Anyway,
saw an article, I briefly, like, I didn't even read it, but it said, like, oh, there we go. Wait, I want to read it out. The headline says, that humans have destroyed about 70% of the animal population in 50 years.
yeah, I mean, listen, the animal population obviously struggled, but you've got to also remember that there are more nature conservation areas than there've ever been. There are more trees on Earth right now than there were 200 years ago. So, in some ways, and that was before the Industrial Revolution, in some ways, it's getting better. In some ways, it's getting worse. We live on a planet where there are other things that are alive and things live and die. There's going to be change. Some species will do better than others. Long before we had, factories and cars and pollution, humans were already destroying stuff. They're chopping down forests. They were digging holes. They were going into places they shouldn't go to. This is just part of existing on an ever-changing planet. So we mustn't get too beat up about this. It's not going to help anybody. Humans are designed to eat meat. End of story, says Peter. You agree with that, right, Simpiwe?
Yes, I'm very much a
Yes.
Zulu girl, and Zulus are known for loving meat. So yes, 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 and yes. Like, if there's one thing about me, I can even have a whole like plate of meat on its own
Oh yeah,
if it's fried
totally. If
easily.
it's nicely cooked, that's all you need. But that's you're going to get into big trouble now with the vegans.
The one thing I will say I haven't eaten is iskopo, which is like a head of any animal.
Mm.
It said that women don't eat that, so I've not eaten it. I'm not
Well,
even
and
tempted to.
then I'm happy to
Um,
change my gender and be a woman as well because I'm not.
have you tried iskopo, Gareth?
Mm. But I did
Oh,
once try. Funny, this came up yesterday at this dinner I was at. One of the women there said to me, "What's the strangest thing you've eaten?" And I remembered I'd once eaten crocodile.
ooh.
Yeah, I broke a very important rule because I always believe you should never eat anything that can eat you. Right? I think respect the food pyramid. Otherwise, some shit's gonna telling you, you're gonna get taken out by some other superior apex predator carnivore. And I usually obey those rules. So if I'm not gonna eat something that can eat me. That's normally I pretty much only broke the rule once with crocodile. Someone said to me, try this. We were at some fancy hotel or something. It is like, it's gross. Crocodile's like oily fish.
Ooh.
It's really not
Oh.
nice. I tried the tiniest little bit of it, and I did not like it at all. So there we go.
Okay, I don't think I'm
Vincent
gonna
says,
try it now after that.
"No, please don't. Don't. You'll hate it. It's not something you should be eating." Vincent says, "I have a 17-year-old vegan roaming around my house. When it turns 18 in January, it needs to go." I agree. I like the way you refer to your offspring as it. That's very funny. Square Peg says, "I will never eat smileys." Yarr. There we go.
Okay.
Stink Mina says, "Real men eat scop." Uh-uh. Then
All
I'm not
right.
a real man. So call me a not real man then. See if I care. Mm-mm. One of my
It's only for
friends
the
last
brave.
night he was saying he went to Italy, and he said he found a shop, a butcher, that was selling pork cheeks, which are obviously the what they use in traditional carbonara pasta. And he said that was something he absolutely needed to buy. So
Ooh,
some people are
that
very
sounds
particular
yummy
about what.
though.
It does sound good, huh?
Yeah.
My girlfriend was vegan before we got to know each other. She definitely wouldn't have been pregnant if she was still vegan. Well, it's interesting. Patrick says most of these so-called climate activists have no idea of physical oceanography and atmospheric science. I research it for work, believe in climate change, but not this pathetic hysteria. Yeah, it's become like an existential crisis for some of these people just because they don't have any other crises. They don't have any real reason to like feel predated upon, but being a victim is so massively important to them. So this is the ultimate victim complex. Is you're like, the planet is not going to survive. We're all going to die. It's like I'm a victim on a global scale. It's that paranoia taken it to its logical conclusion, and it's ridiculous. Lots of people climbing into vegans here. Jared says, I think vegans make us vegans look bad. Some of us just want to do as little harm as possible. I'm not interested in changing other people's opinions or protesting in steakhouses. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, my sister's a vegetarian. She never makes it a big deal. She doesn't say to us, I'm not going to eat that. She just sorts out her own meals and usually will eat whatever is available that is not meat. And usually in every meal, there's something that you can eat that isn't meat. And she doesn't make a big deal of it. And she certainly doesn't think that she's superior just because she doesn't eat meat, which I appreciate from Jared as well. All right, let's move on. We've got some headlines to get to.
Yes.
And there's quite a lot to talk about this morning. So let's go straight into those. Where do we want to begin, Simpiwe? Let's look at the first headline. It is about the new perks for ministers. Now, this has been a big story in the news. I think it was already a story while I was away, but it's become the biggest story. This is in the Daily Maverick this morning. After a vociferous public backlash, President Cyril Ramaphosa has decided to withdraw his latest amendments to the ministerial handbook. Vincent Magwenya from the presidency on Monday afternoon announced that the recent amendments made by the president to the ministerial handbook would be withdrawn. So this is interesting. What were these things? What were these ministerial things? These benefits, these perks? Apparently, they didn't have to pay electricity, among other things. Do you know what the other ones were?
No, I think maybe housing, I'm not too sure what it exactly entailed, but I know the biggest one was like electricity, that they should pay for it, and the DA was like all for them paying like electricity, water. I think also maybe scrapping a bit of their transportation. And I don't know, what does this mean when he says he's scrapping it, they perks? Like,
So, according to the previous draft of the handbook, and this is what got everybody so upset, ministers and deputy ministers, because we've got millions of them now, would receive unlimited free electricity and water. They were also allowed to buy vehicles worth 800,000 Rand and have as many as 15, 1-5
what? Where are you
aides. Yeah.
going? How do you?
No. They not cars. 15 people to help them. People, assistants, aides, PR people, secretaries, people who run their diary, all of that stuff. 15. That created 4 new positions in each ministry. Salary scales of administrative support staff in the ministerial office were increased from 850,000 to 1.15 million per year. Now, apart from the public outcry, as you've already heard from Simpiwe, the DA and COSATU also called for the new amendments to be scrapped. In a statement, the DA said that the president had betrayed the repeated promises he made when he assumed offices to reduce the unbearable burden of wasteful and corrupt spending. But perhaps most shocking of all is that South Africans have known that they were being forced to pay the water and electricity bills of ANC ministers, as well as at least 87 million Rand more every year, were it not for the DA's tireless work to hold the ANC accountable. I mean, it's just appalling that these ministers already don't know what's going on in the country. They have no idea what ordinary South Africans are dealing with. No idea. And then they take extra money out of the fiscus, and we're meant to pay for that too. And they have the cheek to say to us, no, everything's fine. When Eskom doesn't work, when the water doesn't come on, when you turn
The country is great. We must just be patient. We must just
Lindy,
give them a chance. Suga, when you guys are living soft here.
Lindy says, well, that's why all of them are fat. If they have 15 assistants, then what the fuck is there for them to do? Exactly. Vincent says, what does a deputy minister do? What? Exactly. That's also a good point. We have deputy ministers. Sometimes some ministries have 2 deputy ministers. What are they doing?
And then they're going to employ other people to help them, because I thought the deputy is there to help the actual minister with his or her work. So make it make sense, guys. This is I want a joke. No.
Well, these people earn over 200,000 Rand a month, yet they don't want to pay for electricity, while we also earn a minimum wage and we're expected to pay all this bullshit. Absolutely, you see. So let's just be grateful that all of this came out and that the president has had so much pressure piled on him that he's decided he's not going to promulgate these new changes. Good. He shouldn't have even thought it was acceptable at the start. So listen to this. We've got this crisis of water in Gauteng, around water. So apparently, Water and Sanitation Minister Senzo Mchunu has asked lawmakers, please have confidence in us. We will improve water delivery.
When?
Record, dude. You and your comrades. Like, what have you guys done that gives us a reason to have confidence in you? He says, I would say have confidence in us. Have confidence in the measures we are taking, even if it is not maybe now. But have confidence in the processes that are underway because we have applied our minds, he says. And then you can keep the changes under the microscope and give us 6 to 9 months. And we will improve services on the ground. This is what he told MPs in Parliament. No, we don't trust you. We don't believe in you. We don't have confidence in you. Sorry, that's the short answer here. To you?
6 to 9 months. I don't like that time frame. I really don't, because this is not like it's a new issue. If it was like floods or something in Durban and we see that this is just something that's happened and you're like, we are going to make sure that this doesn't happen again, give us 6 to 9 months, then I understand. This is something that you guys could have foreseen. You could have actually put in measures to make sure that we're not in this situation, and you failed to do that already. So yeah, trust is broken, mate. You don't have 6 to 9 months. No. Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
Well, here's
and anyone who starts with the just trust me, they're gonna do worse. It's like someone who's like, not to be rude, but they're about to say something that's nonsense. So
correct. No, you're spot on.
you.
Every time anyone goes, trust me, you're like, no, that's exactly why I shouldn't trust you. But you've got to give criminals points because they're coming up with new ways to get ATM money. So here's a picture of what they've done at one of the ATMs here in Johannesburg. They are now using explosives instead of angle grinders to get the cash out. Explosives. And they say they're not always as successful, but they get the cash. They get the cash. Angle grinders take too long. Unlike explosives, angle grinders are becoming much less popular for ATM thieves. So just so you know, everybody, they're now using. Also, when you use an angle grinder, what do you need? Power. What do we not have? Power. Explosives. You don't need Eskom for explosives. See? So that's why ATMs. Isn't that? I mean, you've got to admire like people who make a plan. Even the criminals. They're not going to be deterred by Eskom.
They're moving with the times. They're like, I need to change my ways. In fact, what's so funny is that there's a dance on TikTok called the Heist Challenge. And they're basically doing gang signs as a dance. So maybe this is also like another way as we're dancing there, but people are thinking, oh, it's just a dance, but it's actually a signal. Hey, that ATM, chief, just 1, 2, and then people are busy dancing.
It's unbelievable.
South Africa. Oh, my word.
Like that's resourcefulness. People always talk about, well, what are you going to do if, the power goes out? Well, we make a plan. You get solar or you get a UPS or whatever. The criminals, they're like, we'll get explosives. Don't worry about us. We're fine. Don't worry, Eskom. We don't need you. When you desperately need people to innovate, you just take away something that they thought they had forever. And look at what happens. That's what happens here. Very impressive. Very impressive.
Yes.
Give credit.
I like that. Well, I don't like the fact that they take your money, but hey, it's like what I learned. I recently learned this, Gareth, like yesterday, and I shared it with Ryan and Mash in the office. So I think we're all familiar with the "I'm not a robot" button.
Yeah,
we've seen that pop up. And I don't know about you, Gareth, but I always thought like the once you click that and now you have to like pick the bridges or the robots, that's actually you authenticating the fact that you're a human.
Yes.
Well. I recently found out that that's not how they determine if you're human or not. So the moment you click that I'm not a robot, what you're essentially doing is giving the website permission to go through all your data. So they'll go through like your recent website visits.
Really?
So if it was your email, maybe Twitter. They'll
Mhm.
look at what you've been recently looking at, and by that, then determine if you're human or not. I
Uh,
was shook. That is
I I'm
wild.
I'm also not happy to hear this, but I'm not hugely surprised. I mean, I don't expect any of these sites to necessarily be telling you exactly what they're doing. I've seen that very funny, it's been going around on social media, very funny video of like a robot that has been made just to click the "I am not a robot" thing. Have you seen?
Oh, wow.
This thing on wheels. There's someone holding up a phone with that page going, "I am not a robot," right? And then the robot actually rolls up to it with like a screwdriver type thing on it, and it clicks, "I am not a robot." And you're like, "Oh yeah, there we go.
Mm,
That's the proof. That's all the proof you need." Anyway,
sure.
um, I think ESCOM are far more criminal than people who dynamite an ATM, says Conco Chris.
They're stealing
Yeah.
everybody's money.
Sons of bitches. I felt good every time I proved I wasn't a robot, says Tabo. Well, now you know. Simpiwa's just let you know. They don't actually care whether you're a robot or not. They're just trying to get your info, and that's what they're doing. Mhm.
That actually took me back. I was like, "What? I feel like I've been lied to." But it is what it is, and that's the era that we're living on. Everyone wants your data, and everyone wants to know what you've been up to, so that they can use it against you, essentially, I guess. So
Right.
be
So
careful next time.
apparently Simpiwa's got some information on how the color of your sheets can make a change to whether you actually get good sleep or bad sleep. And we know we're always interested in this show because everybody who wakes up
Yes.
to be part of the show with us at 6 a.m., all of those people, we all struggle with sleep
Yes.
because we have to be up early every day. So we value and prize a good night's sleep probably more than the people who wake up late. So
Mhm.
tell us, Simpiwe, we want to know what are the tricks that we need to know if we want to have a good night's sleep in terms of the color
S
of your sheets. Apparently, this has
Yes.
something to do with
So, I'm first gonna ask you, what's the color of your sheets? Then, if your color is here, I'll be able to know if you get a good night's rest or not.
white, all white.
White. Okay. So I'll start off with some of the worst colors you can have.
Okay.
Red. Red is
Ugh.
number one because it brings out it's a danger signal and it brings out lots of energy. So that's the worst one you can have. Purple is another one. It's because of its intensity and making people want to be creative. I wonder in what ways. Um,
Do you know
brown is
any,
also
hold
a
on.
no-no.
Do you know anybody who has red or purple sheets? Yes, sis.
I personally don't, but there's folks out there, Gareth. Just because we don't have them doesn't mean that there aren't folks out there.
No,
Brown is
sure, but
also another no-no. Yes.
no, brown. I mean, listen, can I just say, if you have red, purple, or brown sheets, you are a freak. You
I
don't deserve a good night's sleep.
I'm just as shocked. And they say brown is bad because it's kind of gloomy and isolating. Hmm.
Sure.
All right. Now we go to colors that are not that bad, which is orange. I never thought people would have orange as a bed sheet, but it's okay. And it's kind of like brown, but more bright and exciting. Hmm. Then
Okay.
black is another one. It's okay if you do it right, but it also brings up a lot of negative emotions. You'll
Mm.
fear, anger, and sadness. Dun 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 dun. This goes for the color white as well. It can
Oh,
be really
wow.
nice in a hotel, but in your own home, it can come off really harsh and kind of uninviting. And last but not least, in terms of the okay range, beige. Now,
Mm.
it's a good trade off because it's simple, but gives off a bit more peace and warmth. Now, these are
Who
the
wrote,
top
who
three
wrote this?
colors.
Oprah Winfrey?
And now for the best part, the top three colors that you should actually, well, your sheets should be. It is at number three, light pink. And this is because it's known to be gentle and improve your mood. Now, the last time I saw pink in a room was when I was a kid. Number two is green because it's very natural. It
Mhm.
is organic and it just, sets the mood for you to go to bed. And the
Green
number
sheet.
one, I know, right? And the number one color is blue. it's the best color because they say it's very calm, stable, and it brings out feelings of trustworthiness. So now
What
you know, next
what
time you go
what
bed
color are your
shopping,
sheets?
mine is white. I
Hmm.
always liked white. I like the fact that it just made it feel like I was walking into a hotel. And now I'm thinking, maybe I am a bit unwelcoming. So I might change
I'm
it.
sorry. I'm not even listening to your crappy article that you found there because I don't buy any of it. Some of these colors are disgusting. I can't believe that there are people in the world who have red or brown sheets. Yuck. Brown. Yes, sis. How do you
It's
even
an
know your bed
aesthetic
is
thing. I think the
ah,
minimalist aesthetic goes with the brown and beige. So I could see people have that in their rooms. I'm still shocked at the green, the purple, the light pink as a grown adult. I thought that was for kids.
yeah.
Each to their own. Each to their own.
I
But
always
yeah.
thought the people who had black sheets, and I see some of the people in the comments who have black sheets. I always thought those are people who like very 50 shades of gray and, you know, they're a bit freaky and they like the black sheets because there's a dark side to them, that kind of thing. But I don't know whether any of this makes any sense at all. Brown
Well,
sheets,
next time
good
you
God.
can't sleep, blame it on your sheets. Just be like, "Oh, got the wrong colored sheets on today."
Snaya says, whenever I book accommodation, I look for the bedding color. When the room has red, orange, brown, or yellow bedding, I'm not booking that room. Oh, me too. Ancient Ether says, what does the article say about gold sheets? Jeez. What kind of porn star, says Carl the Santos, says, what kind of porn star has purple sheets? Exactly.
Yeah, because they said it brings out creativeness. I was like, what kind of creativity are we bringing out?
Dear Linda is like Simpiwe and I, very traditional. White sheets only. Yeah. Okay. Snai also says, I like white, gray, and blue bedding. Was this article written by a woman? Says Ancient Ether. I'm pretty sure it was. This makes zero sense, says Carl. We're told to stay away from blue light at night because it wakes us up. Bullshit list. Yeah, well. Listen, we're always trying to find information that helps us, but I don't know that this is exactly what we were looking for. I have red sheets, says Mo Rabbit. I sleep like a rock. Sis, red sheets, you should be ashamed. Red.
Isn't that? Yeah, I'm also judging you. I'm high key judging you. Red. Why
Gross.
red? What's the color of your room?
Sam
Do you
says, brown sheets are for people who have no anus muscle. All right. On that superior note, we're going to end this hour. We're back in a couple of seconds with a whole lot more. And Professor Christopher Paul Szabo, who is the host of Beyond Madness, will be joining us in just a short while. Stick around. Just because it's about technology, connecting your business to the rest of the world doesn't mean you need to send rockets to space and use complicated solutions. Want to simplicate things? Well, join Jaco Voigt, who is the CEO of Catalytic, on the Unbundled podcast. With skin in the game and a keen focus on educating and assisting you and your business, Jaco decodes all the aspects of connectivity, security, and cloud solutions. Unbundled is brought to you by Catalytic and is available on cliffcentral.com, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This week on the Auto Trader podcast.
I don't know if you read this story, but one of our studio managers sent me this article. I think it was Reno, about essentially there's an aging fleet problem that's happening locally as well as globally, and essentially because of the rising costs of living, buckled with the fact that cars are now reaching an average age of about 9 years. There's some regulations in South Africa, that we'll talk about it, but there's some regulations in South Africa which could potentially impact people actually maintaining their cars and getting penalized for the fact that their cars are a bit older.
Catch us every Monday at 9 a.m. on YouTube and on autotrader.co.za.
All right. It is a Wednesday morning, cliffcentral.com. We got a lot of cool stuff to talk about this morning, to do, and we're going to be speaking in the next hour or so to Professor Christopher. I can't speak this morning. What the hell? Christopher Paul Szabo, who is the host of Beyond Madness. I think it has to do with the fact that I went out for dinner last night, and I'm not used to doing things during the week at all. I'm so out of practice. By the time I eventually got home, I was like really tired yesterday. I suddenly thought, well, I had a early morning show. I did a day at the office and then went through for this dinner, which was, it started at 5:30 and ended at like 10:15, which is quite long for a dinner. But I'm totally out of practice. Like 10:15 is not late if you consider those all-nighters I used to be able to do. What's wrong with me? I'm just getting old, right, Simpiwe? That's what it is.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I was going to ask, are you hanging?
Yeah.
As the cool kids would say, after two glasses, you just out.
I didn't even have anything to drink. That's the funny thing. I was just hopelessly out of practice.
This is real old age kicking in, Gareth. Oh my! You didn't even have alcohol. No. This is just the pits now. You didn't.
No,
even drink.
I had Coke. I had Coke Zero. That's all I had. Coke Zero and a nice meal and good conversation and David Cow doing comedy and Mafiki Zolo were there. And
what?
Mafiki Zolo, 25 years of music they're celebrating. It was incredible.
Wow.
I'm going to see if I can find
I love Mafiki Zolo, or even my grandmother.
So
it's like one of the few
good.
groups we enjoy together, and Mafiki Zolo is what. Oh man. Oh,
So good.
that is amazing. I've also had the privilege of seeing them perform live, and they're just great. They don't do too much where there's 50,000 things happening in the background, but in the same breath, you're just like, wow. Oh wow. Okay.
And they're both looking terrific. So there's Nhlanhla and Theo, and they're both full of energy, still do all the dance moves. They really are cool. They did about 4 or 5 songs. It was just so good to see them on stage again, because you remember, these guys have been around for a while. They're one of the OGs of the South African music business. And they did, obviously, Tatis Gubu, which was amazing.
Tatis
No, sorry, not
No, isn't that Bongo Muffin? That's Bongo Muffin.
sorry, Dihamba Nawe, which was cool.
Oh, Weputi. That's
exactly. And just really cool, easy for them. They you can see they do all the moves on stage. They're real professionals. I'm going to see if I can't play you a little bit of it now. By the way, the other thing I wanted to talk to you about this morning, and we mustn't run out of time before I get into all of this. There's a lot of stuff on the agenda. I'm just trying to see that I get to all of it. Alex Cage is not with us this morning. I just needed to let those people know who came, especially to hear him this morning. He could not join us today, but he will be joining us at a point in the future, so stick around for that. Also, got to mention that we're going to have Pop Halatse, who is the former mayor of Joburg. She's trying to become mayor again. She'll be on tomorrow to talk about all of this that's been going on. There's lots of controversy to get into there. And I think she listened to us the other day, Simpiwe, when we said, if you're on this show, you become mayor.
Yes.
Because that is what happened. So
we
here
have
they
a track
record. It still sounds as good as ever, right?
Oh.
And people People got up, they were dancing. You could see
Did
people
you guys
just
do the wedding step? You know, like
yeah,
yes.
I did not because I'm just boring that way, but it was fun. It was really fun to see everybody also just going out and doing this stuff, because how long has it been since we've had like corporate events? This one was for MSC, the Mediterranean Shipping Company, the cruise company. They are bringing one of those big ships to South Africa next year. It's a major launch. You know, those ones that have like capacity for 4,000 people on board.
Oh
It's
yes.
like a city on the sea. It's absolutely incredible. The facilities in this thing are just mind blowing. And so South Africa is finally getting those really amazing ships to sail around our waters. And if you haven't ever been on a cruise before, all I can say is it's really, really fun. It's a great way to spend a holiday. It's lovely for families. It's an amazing trip to do if you are traveling anywhere in the world. But in South Africa, we don't really. I mean, the people have done these like Portuguese islands and Mauritius, and it can be the most fun. I remember I went with my family in 2000. Yeah, we all went on a cruise with other friends of ours, and it was just so much fun. So if you haven't ever done this before, these are the guys to talk to, and they're bringing this brand new ship out here. So I thought I'd just drop in that bit of information. So we were talking about sleeping and the quality of sleeping, and Simpiwe found this nonsense article about about the color of your sheets. At least we're looking at all the different ways that you can have better sleep. But now that it's summer, I don't know about you, but I don't even bother with blankets or any of that stuff now. I have the sheets on my bed, pillows, and then I have a very thin, like almost, it's like a bed cover, I suppose you could call it, but it's not thick at all. That's all I use in summer because it's too hot. I don't know about you, but I don't have air conditioning in my room. So I just have a window open. And sometimes it's so goddamn hot, you even lie outside the blanket.
Gareth, you have the windows open. Do you have something for the mosquitoes? Because it's that season as well.
They haven't come yet, but I know they will. And then I'm going to have to make a plan. But right now,
Okay.
it's that, someone sent me this very funny meme the other day of the like summer schedule. And then it says from 6 in the morning till 6 at night, flies. And from 6 at night until 6 in the morning, mosquitoes.
Mosquitoes, yes.
God.
Yeah.
But
so I'm lucky enough to have like a fan in my room.
Nice.
And that's what I leave on during the night for now. I don't think it's something that I can maintain because I don't like the sound it makes, so I'll wake up in the middle of the night. But I'm similar to you, Gareth. I also have like this light sheet that I'm like, yeah, that's the only thing that's covering me during the night. And we'll see, because it's only going to get hotter. And once it rains, ladies and gentlemen, it's going to get worse and worse.
We had We had just a little bit of rain yesterday, which I think has cleared the air a little bit. I saw some of the roads are looking a little bit cleaner when I drove to this dinner last night. I don't know, but we need a proper rain. And I saw that there was some flooding in the south of Joburg.
Really?
You see that? Yeah. Hail and flooding in Alberton, Meyersdal, those areas. So someone showed me pictures and they were like, this happened today. I said, no, it's bullshit. But he even like reverse searched on Google with the pictures and they are from today. Well, it was yesterday, but that was flooding there. So yeah, quite hectic. Mosquitoes and possibly humans coming in the windows, says Little. Well, yeah, possibly, but no, don't worry. I'm not going to have humans and mosquitoes coming in. The mosquitoes can get in, the humans can't. Oh, look at this. Carl says the other day I had that Dihama Nawe song stuck in my head, and I was whistling it all day, and people were like, "How's this wart oak?"
I don't know what it is.
That is one of those songs, though, that gets played. And even here, Congo Chris says that little clip triggered my Umlungu shuffle. It is one of those songs, though, that everybody plays that at the weddings. Everyone. White,
yes.
Black, colored, Indian, everybody.
Yes. It's song. That song and Kalagat. I don't know what was in the air when people heard that song and they just fell in love with it. It has the entire South Africa in a chokehold. When you
Mm,
play Nkalagata, everyone is
mm.
standing up and everyone is going to dance. I don't know what it is about that song. I don't know, but
It's
yeah.
it probably reminds us of a time where we didn't have a bullshit government. That's maybe why, and maybe it's, we loved that then. Robert says Meyersdal and Glen Vista are cursed. No power ever, no water ever, and then floods from the angry hand of God.
Yeah, places you do not want to live at. Don't do it. It's a scam. Just like the
Yeah,
North. Don't do
you
it.
know what? Simpiwe, you just upset me because I was having a really nice day and I was thinking about summer. Now you had to bring up fucking mosquitoes. I was having such a happy day. Ugh.
But that's the reality, Gareth. You can't live in Dreamville forever. Come back.
Why did you have to do that? Seriously.
You know,
Oh
it
my
shows that I
God.
care. Because the first thing I was like, mosquitoes, windows open. No, no, sir, could not be me. Not doing that. Mm-mm.
Tracy says nothing worse when you've just settled into bed and you're tired. You know when you're really tired and you can just feel yourself drifting into sleep and then
And you just like,
She
damn
says,
it.
she says when you reach for the doom and it's empty. You can't keep a can of
Oh.
doom next to your bed. Aish. Breathe
Yeah,
that
like
in.
how do people deal with mosquitoes? Do you guys not have like I know there's like some things that you can spray on your body that will not get you stung by the mosquitoes. But
Citronella oil and stuff. Yeah.
yeah, like because that's also another trick. Mosquito bites are not cute. Then you like itching and whatnot. In fact, I saw there was a company that's designed a thing that can take out mosquito stings, and you just
Hmm.
pluck it there and takes out the sting.
You think that
But
works? That's bullshit. That doesn't work.
there's a whole company. Clearly, they're selling. Clearly, they're doing something right.
Nonsense. Like your color of sheets discussion earlier. So just quickly, this is quite fun. A lot of people now talking about these songs that we mentioned Dama Nawe, and even Tatis Gubu earlier, and then Impi is another one. Congo Chris says that fits into that Nkalagata category.
Yes.
Michael says 50-50 will be played at my wedding. That's
No,
another.
Mandas, no, I need to vent. I need to get this out. Mandas, what were you? No,
Shame is
that song, I
dead.
don't like it. I don't like that 50-50 song. Let's go 50-50. No, we're not going 50-50. You're selling kids lies. We are not doing that. It's a great song, but please, I'm letting you know, any man listening out there, I'm not doing 50-50, chief. We're not doing that nonsense. No. No, 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 no.
Just on the mosquitoes thing, I know we're jumping around a bit here, like mosquitoes, but you know those tennis rackets that have the electricity in them that shocks any insect that's around.
Yes.
Those things are quite good. And here, Derek, I think, says you've got to get one of those electric shocking blue lights, which you can actually put in your room, I suppose. And then every now and then you'll just hear it go, and you'll just see one of these things being roasted. But I would rather have them killed. I mean, I'm all for that.
That sounds like a great sound to hear. Like just
Yeah.
something just died. Yay.
Every time I get one of those with that racket, because I've got one, every time I get a fly or a whatever with that racket, I'm so happy. I'm like, yes. It makes me so. It feels like I've scored an ace in a tennis game. Telling you that it's little things that give me satisfaction these days. Right. So Ian says, and Brenda Fassi's Vulindlela. That's also a good one.
Oh, yes.
They should test my blood, says Ruth. No mozzies ever. I get small nibbles perhaps, but never get bitten properly by mozzies. I never get those welts that people get. Maybe we must test you. Maybe that's a plant rose geranium at your windows or rub the oil on your bedding against mozzies. Okay, rose geraniums. All right. I love that electric racket, says Peter. Yeah, not just me. See? That's a good. That is such a good feeling when you get those insects and you see them sparking and you see the fire start and then they roast on that racket.
Yes.
Man, it makes me happy. I hate those little fuckers.
It's like, yes, another one. Where's your friend? Wait,
Nico says, I once killed 119 flies in one day with my vliegplakkie. Jeez,
did you
wow.
count them? How do you know it was 119? You actually cut. Now I'm a bit worried about you. Why are we counting how many flies
Also,
are we
where do you
killing?
live? That you have 119 in one day. You must be you must be near a horse stable or something. This is interesting. Steve has a salt rifle,
Oh,
which he fills with salt, kills
okay.
flies with blasts of salt. Yeah, but then you got salt all over your house. I mean, we're talking about indoors. You can't be using a salt rifle indoors. Bug assault. That's what it's called. Jesus. I mean, it sounds fun, but I think you'd have to use it outside.
I don't think I
Best way to deal with mosquitoes is to have a small child in the room with you. The mozzies love kids and they'll leave you alone. Yeah, but I'm not going to hire a
Ah.
small child to sleep in the room just to draw the mozzies off of me.
In any case. And now the kid has to deal with not guys. No, I don't agree. No. Protect the kids. No.
So Nico's just letting us know he lives on a dairy farm when he had those 119 flies. So he did count them. Very good. Remember those sticky tapes in the butcheries that attracted flies and mozzies? Those were gross. Oh, yes. And those, you know what, even worse are those ones that they look like a cone, upside down cone, and they've got that gross liquid at the bottom. And the flies fly in the top, and then they fall in that stuff because it smells disgusting, and then they can't get out again. That's those things that people used to hang them in the trees. Those are disgusting. Disgusting. But they work. I mean, clearly, because they're full of flies. And then the flies just rot in there. Gross. Yeah, it's very gross. Okay. My inner Jeffrey comes out when I'm in a room with one of those rackets. I catch them alive and then I pluck their wings and I let them walk on the racket and then they push the button at my will. Oh, that's
Your inner Jeffrey?
Serial killer shit going on there with Michael. I agree. Can't stand these things. Those strips of sticky stuff are called fly bait, according to Steve.
Okay.
Yeah, fly juice is so gross. It's disgusting. People make a mistake of killing bugs. If you have a mozzie or a fly problem, stop chasing spiders out of your house. If you don't have spiders, they'll come once the other bugs are there. I agree. And I have creepers on all of my walls of my house. And in those creepers, I know there are spiders, there are birds that have nested. I have no problem with them. I don't chase them away. I found lots of spiders in my house. I don't kill them. I appreciate spiders because they kill mozzies. That's all I want. Something that eats mozzies has a right of way in my house.
Oh, so if you were in a black household, the reason for not killing spiders would be totally different. They'd be like, "That's your uncle that passed on. Don't kill that spider. No. It means good luck. It means they're here to say something. Right. So we're not going to. No, we're not. Malume Jeffrey. No. So yeah, if we're in a black household, that's why we don't kill spiders, because they're related to you somehow. It's a message from the ancestors.
Listen somehow. To these sick people. Nico used to catch flies as a child and put them in a pellet gun and shoot them against a pole, and they go splat.
What the hell's wrong with you?
That is some sickness. You very bad people here. Listen to this. You shouldn't pull the wings off flies. Rip their legs off so they can't land. Oh my God.
Chris, I'm worried about you guys now.
Robert says, Gareth, would you eliminate flies and mosquitoes if you had the power? See, I know this is a trick question, because if you mess with the ecology, something else will fall out of place and there'll be some chain reaction and eventually it'll affect you and the world. It's the butterfly effect, this whole thing. So you can't just destroy an entire species. There's a reason that we have flies. There's a reason that we have mosquitoes. I just don't want them in my immediate neighborhood. That's all. So I wouldn't wipe them out completely. But if we could find a way, and a lot of these ideas that we've had this morning are pretty good ideas. So, I mean, I'm happy to try some of them. I'm sure lots of you have and have had tremendous success with these things. But I don't want them in my bedroom when I'm trying to sleep at night. That's all. I don't want to wipe them out. I don't want to eliminate and and extirpate the whole fly population. I don't like flies. And if I could get rid of them in my immediate environment, yes, I would. But no, I don't want to wipe them out. I'm not clever enough to know the unintended consequences of getting rid of an entire species. Peter says, I'm on a farm. Flies are plenty, but spiders are all over and they decimate flies and mosquitoes and all that stuff. So yes, maybe that's the key. Just buy like nests and nests of spiders and put them all over your house. That would freak people out, but I don't have a problem with spiders. How do you clean that electric racket thing? I just like tap it against a wooden table or whatever outside, and then it like all the shit fly falls out of it, and then you can start again. What do mosquitoes contribute to the ecology? I don't know. I'm not a.
But they're here for a reason.
There must be a reason. Would you rather have
They-
ants or roaches in your house? Ants,
Tricky.
probably. Ants, I think, are a bit less gross and maybe a little less dirty than cockroaches. I don't know. What do you think? If you had to choose, at
Yeah,
gunpoint?
ants, because roaches are big, right? And you like
Yeah.
it's so embarrassing when you have guests over and then there's just this cockroach that goes behind you and people are just like, this house is not clean. Whereas with
Mhm.
ants, there's kind of like oh no, you can kind of justify it. They're just there, they're hidden, they're by the wall. They After a few minutes, it will be gone. Ants.
Mhm.
Ants. Even though
Mhm.
there's more ants on Earth than people, ants.
I'm with you. Yeah, totally with you. Mozzies are food for many other creatures, says Jean. Doom plug works great when we have power. Yeah, but you see, you can't rely on that
That's
anymore.
the issue.
Tracy says, Peaceful Sleep's room spray is my saving grace against mozzies. Tabard insect repellent stick. See, we're hearing all the good ideas here. Raid liquid electric. Fuck them mozzies. See, people have got ideas. Sisman's ants are gross. Those tiny legs walking all over the dog shit and then in your house. Oh, please. People also step in dog shit and then walk all over your house. It's not a great way to go.
Ants are very small. No one's scared of ants.
I
No one's
find
scared.
ants,
But a
yeah.
cockroach,
Mm-mm.
you get this judgment. There's also a judgment that comes with cockroaches.
Absolutely.
That's
People
I
think you're
don't
dirty
want.
and they think you're a dirty, filthy person, like you said just now. If you have a cockroach in your house, I agree. I'd rather have ants. Ants I can
Mhm.
handle. All right. Well, it is time for us to welcome Prof. Christopher Paul Szabo, who is the host of Beyond Madness, to the show this morning. It's been a long time since we had him on the show, but not the first time. And of course, Beyond Madness is on to season 3. I also have to mention that we won an award, and they were a finalist for this show in the New Gen Awards in the category Best Use of a Podcast to Promote a Brand. Of course, it is worth mentioning also the excellent work that Adcock Ingram OTC, the sponsors of Brave, have brought to the party, because they have made this podcast possible, and they are strong advocates for mental health and for making sure that people talk about mental health issues and make them less taboo. We've got into so many interesting discussions. Every episode has been fascinating in its own way. And Prof. Szabo really does bring amazing guests to the party as well. So it's a great pleasure to welcome him to the show today. How are you, Prof?
Yeah, not too bad, thanks. Good morning. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear. You sound great.
Excellent. And I've even got headphones so that I can hear you.
Very impressed, Prof. That you're getting technologically very adept here on the show.
No, listen. We had a problem with one of our previous guests where he didn't have headphones and he forgot to mention that he had us coming through on speaker. And so there was constant feedback. And every time I would speak, I would have this talking in my head and I would say, hang on a sec, something's not right here. And eventually I called the engineer and I said, listen, what the hell is going on? And nobody could figure it out. And only at the end of the episode, he kind of gingerly says, could this have been the problem? And I'm like, right, okay, we shall re-record.
So listen, Prof, first of all, congratulations on an incredible 3 seasons and counting at this point.
Wow.
Some amazing episodes, and every single one of them, as I said just now, has been fascinating in its own right. You're delving into areas that aren't necessarily to do just with psychiatry or psychiatric medicine and the things people would expect you to talk about, the things that you've spent much of your career focused on, but all kinds, all manner of things, assisted suicide, companion animals, the psychological support animals. You've covered such incredible ground on this. Just give us a list of your highlight episodes, because I think people who haven't listened to the season yet need to get involved and listen right from the start. But what have been your favorites?
Well, I think that the one that really caught me emotionally, because I think when you're interviewing guests on difficult subject matter, one maintains a kind of a professional demeanor, and you hold on to your emotions. But the one that caught me was the trauma of loss episode from last season, so to speak, where the mom had given an account of her son shooting himself and her finding the body, and she works as a counselor at Compassionate Friends. And I think that I kind of held it together for the entire episode, and just right at the very end, there was this surge of emotion that just kind of came up from nowhere. And when you have that feeling where you're just trying to push something down, but it just keeps pushing back stronger. And it caught me right at the very end. And I kind of had a little emotional moment. And I asked everybody just to keep it in, because I felt that it was really, authentic, in the sense that was really how I felt. I couldn't explain it, because I had been very kind of, as I said, professional up to that moment. Came from nowhere. So that was a very powerful episode, and I think that's the one that really stands out in my mind. I mean, all of them are special in their own way. I think they're different. Some are more emotionally demanding, some more emotionally draining in terms of the content. Others a little bit lighter, but always serious in their own way, because I think that each of the episodes deals with an issue. And as much as it emanates from within psychiatry, I think it really does give a lot of information to non-psychiatrists, non-professionals, the general public out there, just to get a sense of the kinds of issues that we deal with in psychiatry, and a lot of what goes on around the kind of main clinical focus between a psychiatrist and their patient, or a mental health care professional and their patient.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because it's one of the things I love about this show. You can get into the really, really complicated psychiatric discussions with other professionals, but you can also let the rest of us in. And one of my favorite things about coming in to work on a Tuesday is I know Prof. Szabo is going to be recording Beyond Madness, so he'll sometimes pop into the office. Only problem is that I don't get any work done for half an hour to an hour when we sit there, because we end up talking about all this stuff. I just want to let people know what we discussed. Was it a week before last when you were in?
Yeah.
Because this is amazing. It takes us to the edge of where psychiatry is at the moment. And you obviously are reading all the journals. You're speaking to other colleagues of yours all over the world. So Prof. Szabo drops this clanger on me the other day. He says, he's been talking to some people in the US about gut health, and, such a huge proportion of, first of all, your body weight, and second of all, the actual biomass of material in your body is made up by these trillions of bacteria that live in your gut. And he says to me, without even the slightest sense of irony, could it be that we are just vehicles for these trillions of bacteria, and that we think we're the principal, we're in charge, we think we're the control and command center? Or could these things be in charge of us? And then he takes it a step further and he says, what about mitochondria who live inside of our cells? Could we just be a vehicle to keep the mitochondria alive? And maybe they're actually running everything. How do we know who's in charge, Prof?
Well, I think that's the interesting thing. How do we know what is in charge? And I think that particular episode, which dealt with the gut and the brain, I think just to put a weight to what you had mentioned, I think if you scoop up all of the content of the gut mucosa and all the microbes that are there, I think it totals about 2 kilos. And somebody said, well, that's about as much as your brain weighs. And I thought, yeah, that's about right. So who is the brain? Is it what we think in our heads, or is it a little bit lower down in our gut? And so I think in that sense, the question is, and this is where the science is moving, looking at the gut microbiota, as they call it. And so we are beginning to understand that there is a hell of a lot that goes on in the gut that really is key in what goes on elsewhere in the body, not least of all in the brain. So this gut-brain link is really interesting. And so the question really was, is the gut the new frontier of neuroscience? I mean, that is really the question. And that is the and so we chat about that in the
you
episode.
You mentioned that the gut the biome that is inside of our digestive system develops at exactly the same time as the brain starts developing. So there may be a link from the very beginning, and maybe you are what you eat, right? And maybe if we eat certain things, we can improve our mental health.
Question about that. I think that the specifics still need to be worked out, because the gut microbiome is a very diverse group of organisms, and I think they're still kind of mapping them. And the sort of precision that one would like to have, if you have these this kind of flora versus that kind of flora, what are you more likely to potentially suffer from, and what could you do to potentially prevent that? So I don't think we've sort of reached that kind of precision medicine in terms of how we manipulate the gut biome, but certainly I think it's moving in that direction, and I think there's a lot of interest. And truth be told, in terms of pharmacological approaches for psychiatry, we've kind of hit a little bit of a T-junction. I don't really see much new coming out. And so that's where we're starting to get repurposing of existing drugs. So like ketamine, for example, and we've had a couple of episodes on ketamine and the use of ketamine for depression. And I think it's increasingly accepted as a more mainstream for treatment-resistant depression. So we're moving into that usage for it, but it's basically an anesthetic drug that's been repurposed for psychiatry. The emergence of the psychedelics, specifically psilocybin. You're going to see psilocybin everywhere now. I was speaking to a lady who's involved in manufacturing, so to speak, and she was telling me how Big Pharma is starting to get interested. And she was talking about the fact that they are looking at Lesotho as a potential site to kind of experiment and grow. So I don't have the facts, so you'd have to verify that. But once Big Pharma has an interest, that you're over the target. So you're going to see psilocybin everywhere.
Yeah, magic mushrooms. I mean, I've heard people who've had terrible post-traumatic stress disorder, that kind of thing. They've because this stuff is illegal, it's still very difficult to get legitimate treatment. And of course, only now are scientists starting to explore it as a legitimate form of treatment. For a long time, it was very taboo, right, Doc? And also, it's worth discussing this ketamine thing a little bit more in depth, and you do go into it in your episodes. But I wanted to ask you, because this was a very controversial thing that came out just a little while ago. Apparently not a big deal in the world of psychiatry, but this whole serotonin discussion, which was all over the news. It was some kind of bombshell when it dropped, that actually they haven't proven that serotonin necessarily treats depression the way that people just assumed that it did for the longest time.
I think it was much ado about nothing, to be honest with you. And we have an episode coming up that looks at that specific issue. And the reason I say it was a much ado about nothing, it's because I don't think, and certainly I can speak for myself, but I'm sure that I can speak for many colleagues, I don't think that any psychiatrist actually ever thought, oh, it's low serotonin that causes depression. That is very reductionistic. And I think that what we've understood in psychiatry and in neuroscience generally is that things are really complex. The more you think the more you find out that you don't know, actually. Yeah. And so we just keep, a good friend of mine in the States said, it's interesting with the Hubble telescope and what have you, the more we sort of look out into the universe, the deeper we look into our body. So technology is taking us in both directions. out into the universe and deeper into the body. And I think you mentioned the mitochondria earlier. I mean, these are the powerhouses in your cells. And I mean, there are whole journals dedicated to these components of cells and looking at what their role might be in specifically a psychiatric illness amongst others. So all of a sudden we're sort of getting into the cellular level. So when we start talking about, oh, it's a substance called serotonin and that's, you know, a low serotonin causes depression. No. That's very reductionistic. But I think the concern there is how it was presented, which kind of suggested that, oh, so therefore, what are these medications we call antidepressants, which work through serotonin? This is all nonsense. And the fact of the matter is one has to be very, very careful, because whilst antidepressants might at a superficial level appear to be manipulating neurotransmitters, you have to then ask the question, but what do neurotransmitters do down the line? So I speak about a cascade of events downstream that are happening that we haven't necessarily fully understood. What we know is that some patients do not respond. What we know is that some people respond to placebo. What we know is that some people do respond. So I think for us, it's more a question of matching. And remember, serotonin is not the only neurotransmitter involved in depression. There's dopamine, and coming back to ketamine, there's glutamate. And in fact, when you start looking at ketamine, and how that actually works, then you start getting into potassium ion channels and what have you. You know, this is complex physiology, and I think so. We're going deeper in order to understand the pathophysiology of depression, and then I could get into talking about brain-derived neurotropic factor, which impacts on the brain, and you actually get brain shrinkage in certain parts of the brain when you're depressed, and then it kind of comes back again. So that in fact what we see is that brain cells are neuroplastic. They can actually die and they can regenerate.
That's quite a new discovery. I mean, I remember when I was learning in I don't know, just because I was interested in textbooks of the time, the sort of late 90s. They were telling us, no, you're born with a certain number of brain cells. By a certain age, you've reached your full count of brain cells. And after that, all they can do is stay living or die. And you don't ever get new ones. And they also don't ever change their functions. Of course, since then, we've discovered that's complete nonsense. Brain cells, nerve cells in the gray matter of the brain and the spinal cord are actually extremely, as you say, neuroplastic, adaptive, constantly reaching out to other cells for new connections, and you're essentially like a self-healing computer in some ways, right?
Exactly. And I think that this whole issue of depression being neurotoxic, actually, where it actually does something to the brain, and the antidepressants actually assist in reversing that. So the paper on which the media kind of leapt, so to speak, has come in for quite a bit of criticism, because I think that as a discipline, one always has to be very careful about the messaging in terms of how you translate scientific data. And let's accept that all scientific data is flawed. I mean, nothing is perfect. So there will be limitations and there will be criticism. The media won't necessarily pick up on that. What they'll do is they'll just get the headline, the soundbite, so to speak. Low serotonin does not cause depression. Therefore, why have we all been taking antidepressants over all these years? It's all been nonsense. So I think they've kind of leapt to that assumption, and there hasn't been a measured approach to kind of just looking at it. What did the paper actually say? What does the profession actually think? And what are the implications?
You're so right. I mean, the media they really distill everything to the point where it's absurd. And nobody's reading these papers except people like you. So thank God you can explain it to us on a show like this. Otherwise, we'd be stuck. Do you think that we have a problem in South Africa or in the world? I mean, we know Americans in particular are hugely self-medicating, and we know that doctors in America, unlike here, your patient goes to you in the US and they say to you, I want this because I saw an ad for it. Whereas in South Africa, your doctor prescribes stuff and you can't advertise those medicines like you do in America. Do you think we have an over prescription of certain drugs in this country. And this is controversial also because maybe we have too many people these days who are being diagnosed with things which may be very mild. I mean, I hear every second or third person saying to me that they've got anxiety. Now, I mean, anxiety is part of the human condition. It's not something that needs to be treated. It's something that needs to be dealt with in the course of normal human existence. Who decided that being happy and not anxious is meant to be the goal towards which we all strive?
Well, I think that you're touching on something very important, which is the medicalization of the problems of living. So one has to be very careful that a symptom doesn't become a disorder. And obviously, you know that for every disorder, there is potentially a treatment, which could be a pharmacological treatment.
Right.
And so you see the sort of movement from an experience of an emotion to a medication can move very quickly if one takes a very tick box approach to how you make diagnoses, and you're not looking at the context of the individual that you are actually dealing with. And so I think that when you look at percentages, I can't remember the raw percentages of people on antidepressants, or the millions of pounds being spent by the NHS in the UK on antidepressant prescribing, but it is, I think, in the order of about 13% of American adults might be on antidepressants in the United States, and you'd have to say to yourself, wow, that's a lot of people. Is it necessarily appropriate? And so one has to be careful as a professional that you don't rush for the script pad, because let's face it, when you're dealing with the difficulties of life, it's complex. And, you know, when you want to actually start to address some of the issues that might need to be addressed, it takes time, it takes work, and you don't get immediate relief from what you're necessarily experiencing. So I can understand where there may be a pressure, and we come back to this direct-to-consumer advertising. I mean, it's incredible in America, actually, if you watch television. The amount of direct-to-consumer advertising that is really actively promoting medication, and they're telling you, the consumer, what you potentially are experiencing and what you need to expect and demand of your practitioner. So there's this pressure. There's this consumer pressure that is taking place at the same time. And I think it comes down to expectations. What is your expectation of life? Because you mentioned it now. Is it that we should walk around in a permanent state of bliss and happiness? I think that's completely unrealistic. And I think that in order to experience happiness, there has to be some struggle. Of course, there has to be. Yeah. I mean, you know, just as there has to be a darkness and light, there has to be that balance. And so I think in life, struggle is part of the deal. And that's not a bad thing, because what happens with struggle? Generally, you learn your lesson, you grow, and you become a more functional, competent person. And then you maybe find more happiness. And so struggle and happiness go hand in hand, actually, if you think about it.
Yeah, Prof, you know what? Because you're a psychiatrist, there are very few people I can speak to in terms where you can speak both with, you know, the alacrity that you do on the medicalization part of this and the diagnosis of actual conditions, diseases. That's what they are. And then some of these things which are either just excuses or social contagions or people's unrealistic expectations of how life should be. I think that it's not told to enough people these days that actually life can be quite hard. And part of the joy of living is overcoming those hardships, which I think you just explained quite well. There are a lot of people who are looking to solve every problem in their life or any discomfort, any non-perfect happiness that they encounter with a pill. So there's got to be a solution for everything in terms of some kind of pill. And we've now moved that into the mental health world. I mean, how many new psychiatric diseases are there since you started practicing? How big is the book got?
You know, I think one of the things that is interesting for me is that if one takes the DSM-5, that's the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, it's in its 5th version, how the number of psychiatric conditions has grown. And you kind of question that. And you say, well, where were all these conditions before? Or are we just getting better at understanding people? Or are we broadening the medicalization of difficulties that people experience with everyday life? And we've kind of got a diagnosis for everything. And if we're not careful, everybody is going to land up with a diagnosable condition. And then eventually, what does it mean? What does it mean? And I think that as psychiatrists, we have to be very careful at not falling into that trap. And it's not to say that there aren't a percentage of people who genuinely and obviously have diagnosable conditions for which certain treatment is absolutely necessary. So there's no issue with that. I think what the concern is, this kind of spectrum approach, where you're saying, well, you don't quite meet the criteria for this condition, but it's on a spectrum. And now suddenly lesser forms get brought into the spectrum and actually almost become equivalent to the sort of mother disease, so to speak. And so one has to be careful that you get this diagnostic creep. I've just come up with the term, diagnostic creep, where you kind of, adding more and more and more. And then eventually, where do we land up? And so I think that as a society, we do need to be mindful of that. Just coming back to something you said about life is hard. On one of my episodes coming up, which deals with self-help, I quote Scott Peck's book, The Road Less Traveled. He's a psychiatrist. And his opening sentence is, life is hard. And it is. But that doesn't mean it's bad. It just means that, hey, there will be challenges. And that's okay. Because in order to grow, you need to be challenged. I mean, if you want your tree to flourish, what do you generally do? You cut it back. You prune it. You challenge it. And it grows beautifully. So challenge, so I'm using the tree as a metaphor. I think it's an important metaphor. I think that challenge is actually central to growth. And in growth, you will find contentment and satisfaction and potentially happiness. But happiness must not be the goal per se. Happiness is a consequence. Happiness is a consequence of how you live your life. And that is dealing with challenge, rising to challenge, testing yourself, and prevailing, actually, when you dig, and ultimately saying, yeah, I'm okay, actually. And there comes the happiness. I'm satisfied.
I know Simpiwe's got a bunch of questions, but I'm on a bit of a roll here with you, so I want to keep going. So, Prof, what do you make of...
Sorry, I'm getting philosophical there. I'm kind of giving you a philosophy of life.
I love this. But so much of this is about a philosophy, because if you don't have a central set of values or a philosophy, not only as a professional as you are, but as a patient, as many of us would be, then you don't know how to regulate yourself. And you will look for outside ways of fixing things that are inside, or inside ways of fixing that are outside. Sometimes you require both. Now, when I was a kid, I most certainly had some kind of ADHD, right? It just hadn't really been diagnosed, or nobody gave a shit. But I was told I was an unruly, undisciplined child who couldn't concentrate and focus for very long. I was certainly not put on any medication. I believe had I been medicated, or certainly if I'd been over-medicated as a kid, I might not have developed the personality that I did. I might not have developed the interests that I did. I had to find many things to keep my brain busy. Constant distraction was always in the air. And if I found a subject that really interested me, I went into it down the rabbit hole and dug up everything I could find about that fact or about that subject. Now, I think there are so many kids who, because they're a little bit distracted, unruly, they have a little bit of this attention deficit disorder, which is widely misunderstood too. And I'd like you to clear that up. They get put on stuff, or they get told that they're a problem, or that they've got a problem, and they don't develop they become a bit numb. They don't develop the personality that they may be required to develop, or that they inherently have. Just because the adults, whether it's their parents or their teachers, don't want to put in the extra effort that child might require in terms of attention, in terms of being given a project that they can really focus on and do something amazing with. It's an excuse. It's become convenient to diagnose a child with this or any other problem, and then kind of just give them medicine so that they quiet down and they're easier to control. What do you think of that?
Well, I think, again, we come to the balance between prescribing for the child who really needs it. And sure. I think that when you're assessing a child, so when you work in child and adolescent psychiatry, you've got to look at the family. And you've got to look at the context, the environment from which the child emerges. And I think you've touched on issues of parenting. Now, obviously, when you do have a child with ADHD, it may be, for example, that the parents themselves may have had ADHD. So these things do often run in families. But you need to look at parenting in terms of how you manage the child. Even if you put the child on medication because they have got ADHD, you still need to look at parenting, and you still need to look at that family system and how it operates, and issues of boundaries and issues of structure and issues of predictability, and how you manage difficult situations, and how does the family actually come together cohesively to manage things. So I think that when you are dealing with children specifically and adolescents as well, you have to look at the family system. I do have a concern that there may be an overdiagnosis and an overprescribing of the psychostimulant drugs. And certainly we see it because a lot of people think that it's a performance-enhancing drug. Now, the truth of the matter is, if a child has ADHD and you prescribe a psychostimulant, their performance will improve. But in fact, what you're doing is you're taking them up to where they need to be. So yes, it's enhancing performance, but actually what it's doing is it's normalizing. If you don't have the diagnosis and you take the medication, you'll get a stimulation from it because it is a stimulant, but your performance is going to hardly increase. In reality, objectively, when they've looked at the extent to which it really enhances performance, you may get the sense that you're going to perform better because you're taking a stimulant. But in reality, the objective measure of the extent of performance is nowhere near what the person thinks is actually happening. And so one of the concerns is that these medications are being used for performance enhancement. We've dealt with that in a previous episode as well, because I think that is a concern. And you tend to find that in adolescents moving into university students. So we have to be careful that an inappropriate use of a medication doesn't undermine the credibility of the medication where it's needed for people who genuinely have a diagnosis and who need that medication. So I think there are a whole bunch of issues that come into that.
You can't say that enough, because here's Linda, who clearly didn't hear us when I said it, and now you've said it again, and she's going, "Oh, Gareth, my niece has been put on some meds." Well, yes, we're not talking about your particular case, and we did say there are people who absolutely need this stuff. Prof said it right at the beginning of his answer. Are there smart drugs, Prof?
I just want to jump in there. I mean, the psychostimulants are probably the most effective psychiatric drugs we have. I mean, if you see a kid with ADHD, I mean, I can remember from my days doing child psychiatry at Barra, it's now Chris Hani Baragwanath Academic Hospital, and you'd see a little kid, 6, 7, literally bounce and rocket into your office, and they'd be all over the place, and you could just see the mom is like, geez, what do I do with this? And here is a child who's got classic ADHD. You start them on the medication, the response is excellent. So if you had to ask me, give me a drug, that really, you can say is going to work in psychiatry, chances are it's going to be that one. So yes, I hear exactly what Linda is saying. And of course, we're not talking about specific individuals. We are speaking very broadly, but I think that the individual comes from within that broad context. And one has to have an approach where you are actually filtering all of your patients through this, saying, what is the diagnosis? What do they really need? What else do they need beyond medication? And again, I come back to something which comes through in most of my episodes, the biopsychosocial approach. So it's comprehensive. You don't just start medication and say, we'll see you in a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 6 months. It's much more than that. And that's where the work takes place. The medication is doing what it's doing, but there are other things that need to happen. And now I've completely gone off track and I forgot the question that you asked.
No, not at all. So the question I asked is, are there actual smart drugs in production? Because this is something I would be really keen to do. And I don't mind being the experimental gerbil or hamster in this either. I think if we can develop drugs that help people deal with severe problems, which we clearly have been able to do, and you just mentioned the effect of these what do you call them?
Psychostimulants. Yeah.
Is it possible that we could develop nootropics that are actually able to improve and increase the performance and activity of the brain, and give people the kind of superpowers that, I mean, before were only available in movies? Is there any chance that this stuff may be developed, or is it complete bunkum?
I would not like to see those kind of drugs developed, because then what are we becoming? And
I
I
don't
think
mind.
that, well, you might not mind, but I think if one looks at what are our expectations of ourselves, we are limited beings. And there's this constant push to get better and better and better and better. And yeah, I mean, I can understand that. But I think that what we really want to do is maximize individual potential, as opposed to making them more than superhuman. Because then we're starting to move into a whole new discussion, which I've become au fait with more recently, which is this whole notion of transhumanism and how we augment humanity to make the human species more than what it was necessarily built as or designed to be.
Right, I mean,
and now we're moving into a whole new dimension.
Not only medicine, then obviously we could talk about technology and whether it's ever going to be possible for us to upload our consciousness, or, you know, to be able to patch language programs into our brain.
Medicine is a technology. You know, I mean, medication is a kind of technology. It's not in the sort of wires and IT sense. It is technology, but I think it really begs the question: where do we need to go? Where do we want to go? What are our expectations of ourselves as humans in terms of we've got to push beyond the limits constantly and get more and better and superior? Superior to what?
Just don't stand in the way, Prof. If you find any of these, I'm willing to be the guinea pig. All right. So I'm sorry, I've given you like 2 minutes right at the end. You've been sitting there so patiently. I know you've got questions for Prof, and you get to see him.
Hopefully she's been fascinated by the conversation. Or she said, "Okay."
I have. Prof, since you guys have started season 3 of Beyond Madness, I'm actually curious to know what you guys are going to be talking about in this season and what you guys are going to be up to.
Well, I mean, we've already released the first 2 episodes of the new recordings, and this week's was on abortion. And so we took abortion as an issue, and we were looking at, you know, what is abortion actually, and looking at the psychological consequences and some of the implications. And I think that what you would find is that we took a non-partisan approach. We just kind of looked at the subject objectively to see what it was. Obviously, we've got the one on serotonin, which I've alluded to. We've got one coming up that looks at aesthetic or plastic surgery and body image. So what's the relationship? And I think that is something. We've done one on animals and healing, and we specifically looked at the role for horses, equine-assisted psychotherapy. We've obviously done one on the gut and the brain. We looked more recently, and that'll be coming out on burnout. Burnout's a kind of a buzzword, and compassion fatigue. What happens when the healers are burnt out? Who heals the healers, and what are the implications for the patients? I want to take another look at dying and palliative care and how we actually deal with dying. I had wanted to really look at the use of psilocybin, because there is some experimentation coming out, or should I say experimentation, there's some research coming out. And in fact, the whole psilocybin issue is really being pushed quite strongly by Johns Hopkins in the United States, which is a major medical center. So it really has gone mainstream. We're going to look at corporate mental health, and that kind of ties in with burnout and compassion fatigue, self-help and psychiatry. So we're looking at that. We're going to do an episode on gender dysphoria. We've also got an episode lined up.
You're definitely not steering away from the controversial stuff. I mean, abortion, gender dysphoria, compassion.
And when is enough? And therapy. When is too much? When is enough? You know, what is the balance? And I think that is really the key word for everything that I do. It's really about where do we find the balance in terms of how we do anything and how we look at anything. So, you know, we could take the issue of abortion, which in certain settings is highly controversial, very emotional. And I think you will find that if you listen to the episode, it's actually dealt with in a very balanced, rational way, which allows you, the listener, to think for yourself. So there's nobody preaching to you, you must think like this or you are like that. We kind of stay away from the partisan issues, and we just try to look at it objectively. So some people, and then of course we also want to look at mindfulness. That's another buzzword, you know, you'll see a lot written about mindfulness. So we want to look at mindfulness and mental health. And lastly, but not least, religion. and spirituality and psychiatry. You know, there's a sense that we are moving from the biopsychosocial to the biopsychosocial spiritual. And it's interesting because what is psilocybin? Psilocybin actually gives you a spiritual experience. And suddenly you're seeing psilocybin everywhere. So what is that telling you? People are looking for something spiritual. And maybe we need to reflect on ourselves as humans, coming back to Gareth's issue about the superhuman and me saying, well, what about the risk of transhumanism and this whole issue of spirituality? So you see a lot of these episodes come together with links that you wouldn't necessarily overtly see, but when you actually get into it, you're saying, wow, they are all interlinked actually in their own way. And that's great because it's not that I set out to do that, but that's how it's working. So Simpiwe, I hope I've answered your question.
That's very
Thank you.
comprehensive.
Okay, maybe said too much.
No, not at all. You know what? I could talk to you for another 3 hours and not get bored. And this is part of the problem. I wanted everyone to hear what I get to do on a Tuesday when you walk into the office. It's so great to be able to spend time listening to someone who's spent their entire life trying to figure out how the human brain works, trying to figure out what we can do to improve our mental, emotional, and biological well-being, frankly. And you're one of the best, which is why our podcast series is getting awards, why it's being mentioned in all kinds of publications. And congratulations on 2 amazing seasons and a third, which has just started. I think we're only just getting our toes wet on this stuff, and you really are you're the leader in this country when it comes to this stuff. So I'm thrilled to have you doing it with us.
Well, that's very kind of you, and it's fantastic to have a platform to really just talk about things that I enjoy talking about with colleagues who I enjoy talking to, and if I can get information out there that people can find of benefit. And more, I think really what's important is that it just gets people to think about things. I don't have to give you the answer, but in your thinking, you may find your answer. And I think that's what's important. And it also enables you to have more meaningful conversations with your psychiatrist or your healthcare practitioner, whoever they might be, because you come in as a better informed person and then you co-create your healing, which I think is important.
Absolutely. Well, listen, a big thank you again to Adcock Ingram OTC, the sponsors of Brave. These are the guys who make it possible for us to put together this amazing podcast series.
Absolutely.
And it is because of the really interesting and unique partnership that we have with them. You know, they don't tell you, Prof, what to do on the show.
No,
they don't tell you what they want to promote this idea of holistic health. They want to promote the idea that we need to talk about things which are sometimes very controversial, sometimes even about the pharmacists themselves. You've interviewed a couple of them on the show.
Yes, we have, and we'll be playing those clips as well.
These are the people at the coalface when it comes to dealing with these things, and really, Adcock Ingram deserve all the credit for this. They're doing a tremendous job of getting people to talk about and to destigmatize so much around mental health. These conversations were not possible. You know, you were having them in very closed circles 20 years, 30 years ago. Now people are talking about them.
Absolutely. So again, thanks to you guys for making it happen in terms of the practicalities. I have a great team around me, Dori, Aaron and the crew. So I'm very well supported by Cliff Central, but certainly Adcock do not at any point ever get involved in the content or the kind of guests I have or the line that I take. And that's fantastic. I have complete freedom, and they obviously have complete faith in the fact that I will deliver a product that they are comfortable to be associated with. And so, absolutely.
Well, 100% right. We love it. Go and listen to Beyond Madness. And we chose that title. Prof chose it especially because he knew it would be a little bit titillating. So go and listen to all of the different episodes of Beyond Madness from the very first episode in the first season, right up to where we are now on episode 2 of season 3. And you will find yourself thinking about things that you didn't even consider before. Thank you very much, Professor Christopher Paul Szabo. Good to see you on. And we will be back tomorrow